Hey, this is Mr. Mitchell. Let's talk a little bit more about imperialism. Now, we talked about imperialism a little bit on the last video. Last video, we detailed how we had uh, the Portuguese sailors going around Africa to get to the spices in Asia, how Spanish explorers went toward um, the West trying to find a route to Asia for the spices, and even Great Britain got in the act. The United Kingdom got in the act doing so. And we mentioned from there that this was kind of the rise of a wave of imperialism. Now, just as a reminder, imperialism is one country taking over or controlling the government and economy of another area. Sorry about the not so good visuals there. But one country taking over the government and economy of another place in the world. Now that happened quite a bit starting at the late 1400s to 1600s. And it was all started by this wave of European exploration. The exploration was kind of started by the spices. You may remember that these European countries wanted a way to get to trade for the spices. The exploration then led to trading ports throughout the world. Trading ports. And since these European countries had trading ports throughout the world, they had the big desire to keep favorable trade, in other words, a nice profit, and that led to the forming of governments in foreign lands, which is, of course, imperialism. I'm going to wipe the board clean here, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the effects of this imperialism. Put it on. Great. More than just spices became desired goods in Europe. From Canada, you had furs. From Latin America, you had silver and chocolate. From South America, you had timber. Also had some timber in our neck of the woods in the United States. Africa, there was gold. And in India, there were the spices that we talked about before and cotton. Seems like the whole world was at the doorstep of Europeans who had the ability to travel to these distant lands across the ocean. You could literally trade in many different places as long as your country controlled the government and economy of these places. So literally, for a few hundred years, there was a dash to get to these goods. And I'm going to increase the dates here. Kind of started with the 1400s, and imperialism went even on through some of the 1900s. And even today, you could make an argument that there are some places that are controlled by other countries, but generally the age of imperialism is pretty much over now. By 1750, there were three predominant countries that were controlling areas in the Americas. In the Americas, you had Britain, or United Kingdom, which controlled this area here, which turned out to be our 13 colonies. They also had interest in Canada. You had Spain, which had big interest controlling of lands down through this area. Not every place, but quite a few places in Latin and South America. And then you had France. France had more of this vicinity right here. This vicinity that would later be sold to the United States when the United States became a country. And they also had a couple of little areas down in the northern part of South America. But when it came to worldwide exploration and worldwide imperialism, it was Great Britain and France that really led the way. You had Great Britain, which actually controlled Australia, controlled India, controlled a few areas down in the Philippine type vicinity. Oh, what am I doing here? I guess I'll let go of that. Now, this is called video gone wrong, is what this is called. I'll erase this area right in here. And I will move this up some right where I had it. Whew, well, I think I'm back online here, folks. Well, anyway, Great Britain also controlled a fair amount of Africa. Now, Africa was an interesting dividing up place. There was actually a meeting in the 1800s in Berlin, Germany, which pretty much divided Africa amongst all the European countries, and no African leaders were even consulted about it. France, as I also mentioned, was a country that had a lot of worldwide imperialism. France controlled a lot of these countries up here in North Africa. France also controlled Vietnam, which you will find out later will have quite an impact on United States history. The old expression was right. The sun truly never set on the British Empire. If you take a look at the places in black, you have places all throughout the world which are part of the British Empire. And no matter which way the sun is the earth is rotating around toward the sun, you would have some place that this British Empire, the United Kingdom, did in fact control. And it wasn't just larger countries that were in on the Imperialism Act. You know, Portugal is a little bitty country right here. Portugal controlled this huge area called Brazil. We have Denmark, which is a little bitty country right here, which was in control of Iceland and Greenland. We have Belgium, which is an even smaller country. I can't really even put here. It's just to the north of France, which controlled a big area called the Belgian Congo, right here in the center of Africa. Seemed like every European country wanted their slice of the pie, you might say. So why did these people in other lands allow European countries to govern their land? Well, some areas were not very highly populated. Sometimes these areas were not very advanced in weaponry compared to European areas. And in some places it just may have seemed like good trade. But for whatever reason, one thing is certain. Imperialism from the late 1490s to the early 1900s changed the world. You can see at the bottom some of the effects of the imperialism of the 1490s to the 1900s. One effect is the spread of disease. Our book is going to claim that the spread of Europeans throughout, especially North and South America, would spread diseases like malaria that would kill up to 10,000 people. The consensus is that the natives' bodies just were not immune to the particular germs that were being brought over by the Europeans. And as a result, that many people ended up dying just from coming in contact with them. Another not so happy effect of all this imperialism was the slave trade. With all these new lands having goods gotten from them, then it became a popular thing to do with some lands to come to conquered lands in Africa and capture slaves to send over to other parts of the world. Now, this was not the first time slaves had been in existence. There had been slaves from conquered lands for many centuries, but there really was quite a bit of slave trade as a result of all these new lands needing people in places to work there. Another reason, or another effect of imperialism, was religious conversion. The primary religion of Europe was Christianity, and probably still is. And as a result, many of the areas that were established became areas of Christianity. North America, probably the most common religion is Christianity. Same thing's true in Latin America, same thing's true in South America, and throughout other areas of the world, Christianity was indeed spread as a result of imperialism. A fourth effect is military strength. For countries like the United Kingdom and France, it took quite a big military to control all these certain areas of the world. And if any country were to hope to gain their independence, they would need to have a strong military just so they could conquer the militaries of these strong lands. You had to have a good navy to send ships all throughout the world, to send ships to your to the areas where you're traveling. So one of the effects was military strength. And finally, a result of imperialism, it wouldn't come about till many, many, many years later. But of all these lands that I identified on here, most of them are their own countries now, all throughout North and South America. These are not lands now controlled by England and by France and by other places. These are places that in Africa as well are now independent. They have finally somewhere, most cases 1700 through 1900, broken free of the bonds that were imperialism. Now, the effects of imperialism is just really hard to even fathom because it really changed the world. I mean, because you can even look at these 5 areas here. Because of the diseases that were spread, vaccines were produced more quickly than they would have been before. Because of the slave trade, you had people that were moved around the world, and right now descendants of people who were in Africa are now in many places of the world. Slave trade, however, was abolished almost every place, and even as early as the 1800s. Religious conversion, you have millions of people who are Christians because of the imperialism that there was then. Military strength, just about any country that is to trade and to defend themselves has to be strong, and I think this is something that was an effect of the imperialism. And you have many, many, many nations that are now free because they have finally broke through. I mean, just think of the languages that we speak. Here in the United States, we speak English. Much of Latin America speaks Spanish. Even here in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. These are all European languages. And this age of imperialism was a time when languages were brought forth, and that's what the primary language happens to be in many different places. Well, I hope you've learned a little bit about imperialism and its effects. Let's go to some questions about this. Question number 1, what is imperialism? Number 2, where did the United Kingdom establish colonies? Name some places. Number 3, where did France establish colonies? Number 4, where did Spain establish colonies? Number 5, the saying is the sun never set on the blank empire. What empire are we talking about? And finally, name 5 effects of imperialism.